So with that, who's up first? Mary?
Mary Blumberg,
All right.
Atlanta Regional Commission. Thank you.
Okay. Hello, everyone. I work with ARC, and for those of you that are from Atlanta, you probably know us for transportation. We've got a pretty diverse portfolio, as you can see up here. The area that I work in is aging and health resources. And we're both an area agency on aging, which means that we are responsible for planning for the needs, future needs of older adults and persons with disabilities. We're also the Metropolitan Planning Organization, which means we do most of the transportation planning for the region. So what I want to talk to you today is about our Lifelong Communities Initiative, which really just means creating environments and communities and neighborhoods where people of all ages and abilities can live throughout their lifetime. And in addition to, as an area agency, we do a lot of direct services that we contract out with counties and nonprofits. Like we do a lot of transportation services, we do respite services, we work with caregivers, we do homemaker and in-home personal care services, those type. But the focus of my work really is more that future planning and getting the Atlanta region ready for a changing demographic where we're going to have a lot more older people. Our communities, as most of you know, was designed for very car-centric. People have their individual cars, it's spread out. Homes, there's not a lot of diversity in homes types in those neighborhoods. So these are the three focus areas that we concentrate on, mainly to get ready for our aging population. That's housing, just basically having a diversity of housing options at different price points, different sizes. Transportation, having good transportation alternatives, and besides a car, being able to drive a single car, and then having services near where people live so that they can access them very easily. These are the principles. We've been working on lifelong communities for about 10 years, and these are just basic principles of good planning, smart growth, urban design. I mean, these are all familiar to it, and these are the things that we work towards to make our communities more lifelong. I think that this part is a very nice follow-up to some of the questions and discussions that were discussed previously, and that words matter. We have a really hard time articulating this issue. We have a very hard time of getting anyone to self-identify as aging. Nobody's older, no one's a senior. It's always 10 years beyond. And so we've been exploring how to get this message across, how to draw the attention of both citizen advocates and policymakers that we are starting to live beyond expectations. We're living longer than ever before. And because of this longevity, which we all want, we need to make some changes right now in how we live. We follow this theory of change. We're big believers in this. Frameworks Institute, if you had a chance to look at their work, Gauging the Aging, has done a lot of research on this. But how do you get people to change their hearts and minds and become engaged on this issue? Starts with good communication. As I said, words matter. Then you get a public discourse about it. Eventually someone's thinking changes, and that leads to changes in public policy. So moving forward, we're trying to change our messaging from that individualism is how you stay healthy and age well. It's not just about eating right, it's not just about exercise, it's not about saving your money, but that what surrounds us shapes us. What surrounds us shapes us. So you can have enabling environments by having some of these good principles. The rules of engagement, and I think some of these have already been discussed previously. You've got to have good community development and engagement of the citizens. Change won't happen unless you change the hearts and minds of people. You've got to change the way things are funding. There's no big Santa Claus coming down with a lot of new money for us. So if we want to change our neighborhoods, change our structure, we've got to get the existing funding to be spent in a different way, and for people to consider that and want to do that. It's been said before, this work is very interdisciplinary. It can't just be aging specialists, can't just be planners. It's got to be many different groups coming together. And as you're trying to put forth these solutions, you've got to be able to articulate the issue before us very clearly and succinctly, and you've got to offer specific solutions. No more tsunamis, no more weather-related things showing panic in the people. We have to say, this is happening and we together can solve it. So, you know, we've used the traditional community and development engagement techniques. I know you're all familiar with this. This is a way to give a sense of place where people can come together, to build community. All of these things are great ways to build support for this issue and to also make a community more lifelong. We've done some housing briefs. I'm not going to get into this today. It's online at our site. But, you know, just a few key facts about why there's not enough affordable senior housing, how the population's changing, how a person's needs change throughout their lifetime from the type housing, and basically that the message here is that we need to just have varieties and options in different type housing types. And then on the back of this one-page flyer, we've got very simple solutions. We've got things that the state can do to make housing more affordable and better supply, and then we've got a few of the local solutions that people can work towards. Transportation is another area we can dive very deep into. We know that 90% of the people age 65 and older in Atlanta have poor public transportation access. It's very, very spotty where we have it. And so when we look at local transportation solutions, part of it is just awareness campaigns and providing that bridge to consumers on what's out there and making sure your elected officials and people are informing people that there are services out there. There may not be enough, but how do you access it? How do you find it? We're also doing a travel training where there is transit available. We have senior ambassadors that can ride the bus, teach them how to read the schedule, all of those things to provide that bridge. And I really think this on information services is one of the big areas that technology can bridge the consumers with services. I just want to point you to simplygetthere.org. I'm not going to go into it, but it works like Kayak. It's a trip discovery tool where you can just put in your trip origin and destination. It will help you plan your trip anywhere in the Atlanta region, in the 10-county region. What's unique about it is it does have a few screening questions you can answer if you may qualify for specialized services such as I'm 60 or older, I'm a veteran, I need accessibility, that kind of thing. This is what the site looks like. We are working now to bring it to the next stage of development where we'll have centralized eligibility, booking, scheduling, to the point to where we want people to be able to book their trip, just like an airline ticket. And so right now we're working on the design of that. When we talk about lifelong communities and technology opportunities, you know, there's many areas, but looking at improving technology to make it easier, we call it HST, human service populations, to telework, increase teleconnect services so that people can get the basic services they need. We need, as we move into this Simply Get There, we need a regional application. There are all of these different programs that have different criteria for eligibility. So I think technology can help us streamline that, and that's certainly a way we can use technology and make it easier. With our actual transportation providers, there's still a lot that can be done to improve route planning, to offer more frequent service. Congestion and traffic problems are a big issue here, and if we could plan that in real time, that is something that would be a great help to us. Just a quick plug, this isn't about technology, but On June 28th, we're going to have a national screening of Coming of Age and Aging America. It's a vital picture documentary that's going to be shown on PBS across the nation. It's an hour fantastic film. I got to preview it already. So we'll make sure this group gets the information about that and hope to see you there as we learn more about ageism and overcoming this and making our communities lifelong. Thank you.
Thank you, Mary. We are going to hold questions for our panel after our 10-minute talks have ended. So please keep your questions in mind for our panel. You may have heard Mary's voice recently on NPR. She was featured on WABE, speaking with some local seniors about affordable housing for seniors. So it was great to hear you on there. I was thrilled. So we'll have Wayne go next.
Sure.
Did you have any slides?
No slides.
All right.
I wanted to adhere to the 10 minutes, so I didn't really want to bring up a lot of stuff. But if you want to, yeah.
I'll give you a background slide.
Which is fine.
All right.
Great, thanks. So my name is Wayne Lee. I'm the Oliver Endowed Chair of Design and Engineering here at Georgia Tech. I run 2 labs here. The Innovation and Design Collaborative, which is a multidisciplinary design center that looks at 5 main things, right? It's a center for design thinking. So we look at empathy, contextual awareness, rapid iteration, right? Entrepreneurial sustainability, and creative craft. So we're looking at transdisciplinary knowledge and how we can actually leverage all the disciplines on campus to solve real world problems. The other lab I run, and I've worked with Professor Sanford as well, on aging in the home, is a transportation design lab. So I'm a professor of practice, I'm not a professor, right? I'm actually proud of that. I run a designs firm in San Francisco. We just finished a concept car for Toyota Motor Company. So our car lab looks at specific issues with autonomous vehicles, and General Motors has paid for us to look at aging as one of those things, because they see that the baby boomers still want to drive, but right they run through certain issues when they approach a certain age. So things like last mile problems, cargo access, ingress, egress of the vehicle, things like that. So we do a lot of that. We have our own kind of 2010 Chevy Malibu, and one of the things that we preach is contextual awareness, which is getting out into the community, right? It's a lab, but most of the work is done outside of it. The lab is actually just there to prove your prototypes. It's not there for you to make them or test them, right? So you go out in the community to get things done. We work with several groups, some community engagement groups around Atlanta that does that. So those are my main research areas. Like I said, it wasn't always a professor. Designed for ideal product development, Pottery Barn, ran sunglasses for Nike. We actually designed sunglasses for Michael Jordan. So a lot of those types of things are more about how we can see how design, practice, can influence theory. We had one more research grant that's actually teaching engineers how to draw like artists and unlocking their creativity. It's an NSF-funded grant. And the funny thing about it is I was giving this speech for that particular grant, which is teaching engineers how to be creative. That was at a conference, the Electronic Visualization Arts Conference in London, and we had the chief technology officer of DreamWorks Studios come and look for the software, said, could we use our animators to be test subjects for your software? So it is about engaging your research and putting it out in the field. That's what rapid iteration is, bringing it out to people, seeing how they react to it, and then making changes. And in the last year, we've had 12 publications. So I really don't see a conflict between academia and theory, academic theory and research practice, right? They're the same in my opinion. They're just 2 sides of the coin. The question is just where do you do your research, right? So that's me in a nutshell. I'm willing to kind of try to keep it short, and then if you have any questions, feel free to ask. All right, thank you.
Excellent. Thank you, Elaine, and thanks to the organizers, John, Wendy, Tracy. Thank you for dinner last night and taking us out to the roof. I don't know if you got a chance to go on the roof, but it's a wonderful view of the city. I appreciated that. So I'm here from the University of Illinois at Urbana-Champaign, and the title of the talk that I want to spend the next few minutes on is Age-Friendly Champaign-Urbana, Leveraging a Community Outreach Effort for Research. So it really speaks to what Andrew talked about being informed by older adults, having research related to the real-world problems of older adults. And so as I go through this talk, our university is engaging in this new area. We have a lot of strengths in health, we have a lot of strengths in engineering, and we're bringing those to bear with community involvement towards improving the lives of elders. And so myself, I'm a professor in kinesiology and community health. Actually, I'm a basic scientist. I study gene expression and aging and how exercise affects the brain and the gut. So I come at this from a very different angle, and my administrative role, which is as the director of the Center on Health, Aging, and Disability, has brought me into this applied type of research, and I really see the value in it. We've started this age-friendly Champaign-Urbana effort. We have a nice logo here. Anybody recognize what that logo is? Fountain of Youth.
Is your clicker working? All right, is that your next slide?
No.
No.
Which, is it this one?
There we go.
Right there. So I come from the College of Applied Health Sciences. Really, we're at the bookends of medicine. So while medicine is the treatment of disease, our college focuses on the prevention of disease as well as improving the quality of life of those living with disease and disabilities. And certainly aging is a focus of our college. Obviously, this has high relevance due to economic incentives to keep people out of hospitals and living independently in their own homes and communities longer. This is a big goal. I come from the Center on Health, Aging, and Disability. Our mission is to foster interdisciplinary research, education, and outreach that promotes health and wellness, healthy aging across the lifespan, healthy communities, and optimal participation of individuals with disabilities. We have a long-standing history of disability-related research and outreach on our campus, including curb cuts, including kneeling buses, all those types of things. We have, arguably, we had the founding father of disability who started on our campus after World War II, bringing veterans back to higher education and learning. So I guess I'm preaching to the choir here when we talk about the challenges of aging. Clearly, there's a lot of challenges that we need to meet, not just for the older adults themselves, but also for the caregivers and the children of older adults. Kind of going through that now with my parents, and I'm sure many of you are as well. Appropriate technologies, we believe, as you believe, can assist us in assisting our older adults in the challenges that they face. What I really want to talk about is really two examples of high priority efforts for our center. Our collaborations in healthy aging research and technology, or CHART, kind of a research program in terms of aging and technology, and also our age-friendly Champaign-Urbana effort, which is a community outreach effort for the cities of Champaign-Urbana, which of course where we're located. And I don't see these as mutually exclusive, like Andrew was saying. I think incorporating community outreach and research together really provides more value and introspect than doing one or the other. Getting out of your silo and getting into the community, having older adults interact with the researchers in an environment that will allow for that. So really, it's about community outreach and research better together as opposed to individual and separate. So one of the efforts that we're working on is CHART, Charting the Course for Successful Aging, which really is at the intersection of human factors, health, aging, and disability, and technology. We're starting this interdisciplinary campus-wide program dedicated to improving the lives of older adults. And what I really want to focus on today is in the black there about the community linkages, as the title implied. So we're bringing together campus strengths, like I mentioned, in health and engineering to build this world-class program to improve the lives of elders and also those with disabilities and people who are aging with disabilities and comorbidities. And a big piece of that part was Wendy's coming to Illinois from Georgia Tech. So that was a very good thing for us. but also good for Georgia Tech, because I think now the two institutions can work together very closely on these efforts, and Wendy's got that as a major goal. So we have a lot of pieces to the puzzle, I think, at our institution that really need to be brought together. I'm here as the representative for the Center on Health, Aging, and Disability, but I also have here Cash Cassavetes, who's going to talk later this morning. He's from the Healthcare Engineering Systems Center in our engineering college. So together we're working with Central Campus and our respective colleges to build this program. We have a lot of pieces within our representative units. In our unit, we've got kinesiology, speech and hearing science, disability resources, etc. And then, of course, in engineering, you have all the engineering disciplines, including industrial and systems and civil and computer sciences. Through our two centers, we're working on developing the programs, and of course, Wendy's at the center of that as well. But really, all of these kind of not fringe, but circles around the center are going to be instrumental in promoting this program. We have a new College of Medicine on our campus that's engineering inspired, so training new clinician innovators I think is going to be central to this. We have partnerships with local healthcare agencies and Carl Hospital. We're actually committed to building a life home, which is going to be similar to the Aware Home in scope. So we'll be able to use it as a living research laboratory. But what I wanted to focus today on is our age-friendly effort, our community outreach effort, to inform our research program. So we believe that community linkages will create opportunities for collaborations, identify challenging problems, expand participant registry, serve as a resource link for older adults, caregivers, and the service agencies and researchers and students. So we've engaged these constituents and stakeholders, and one of the ways we've done that is through age-friendly Champaign-Urbana. So we're spearheading this effort with both city governments. In fact, here I am with our now, I guess, lame duck mayor of Urbana. She just lost an election, but the new mayor, I come to know that she's very much age-friendly and will support our effort. We are in Champaign County. You can see it here in East Central Illinois. So right now we're focused on the cities of Champaign-Urbana, which are very local to our university, but hopefully very soon we're going to be reaching out into the rural community, and including all of Champaign County, which is very rural outside of our micro-urban community, and engage the folks, the older folks out in the farms and the small towns within our county in this effort as well. So are any of you familiar with the ARP's age-friendly network? A few people, right? So Atlanta actually is in the network. They started in 2014. So World Health Organization in 2007 started the Age-Friendly Cities program, and WHO has designated AARP as the service agent of AARP of age-friendly within the United States. We've entered the program. We were the second and third cities in Illinois to enter. Evanston was the first, so we entered a few weeks ago, actually. We've been in the network now for a little bit, but we've been planning this for the last couple of years to get in the network. And so our goals as an institution and as a committee, actually, are obviously to make Champaign-Urbana more age-friendly and livable, to achieve the status of age-friendly in the eyes of organizations and our citizens, importantly, to demonstrate to our state government our local impact. Many of you know that Illinois has gone without a budget for several years, and that certainly impacted higher education, but many higher education institutes are affected by state budgets. And so the more you can develop and show local impact to your state, I think it is of benefit. So obviously we want to attract high quality faculty, keep them in the community after retirement. A lot of university towns are becoming retirement havens. We think Champaign-Urbana could be one such town. We certainly want to learn from our older generation. We want to address research questions, and we think that we can do that with the program focused on technology and health, creating a living laboratory. We obviously want to provide opportunities for our students, and we want to attract traditional and non-traditional funding for this effort. So many of you probably know the domains of age-friendly. You talked about several of them. There's many: transportation, housing, social participation. We are one of the few academic institutions that have taken a lead on promoting age-friendly cities in our local area. One thing we want to bring to the flower, I guess, is the research angle. So using, community effort to inform research and having that research get back in and translate back into the community. So that's really what we're about with this effort. We have a steering committee that includes, importantly, both representatives from both local governments, because you talked about, financial. If you don't have the backing of the cities in your effort, you're not going to make much progress when you go to identify problems and try to solve them. So we've got both representatives from the city planning of Champaign and Urbana on our committee, as well as you can see many other representatives that provide services for older adults, as well as community services in general. It's a process, which is good. So AARP and the World Health Organization set up this process. It's an iterative process. It's usually a 5-year cycle where there's a planning phase where you involve older people, you assess age friendliness, you develop an action plan. Once you've collected that data, then you implement the plan, then you evaluate the progress, and then you continue the cycle. So one metric that AARP provides through their Public Policy Institute is the Livability Index. And here's ours. So basically it goes through the petals of the flower, and using data that it collects from various sources, it gives numbers. It's not perfect. You can certainly argue against all the metrics or whatever, but you can see the score for Urbana there is 55. So a relative average would be 50. So if your community scores a 50, that's average. The highest community, I think, might be San Francisco. It's like 74. I think Atlanta's like 48. I looked at it this morning. Good in some things, not so good. I think you mentioned a couple that fell a little bit short on. But we can use metrics like this as well as others to gauge our effectiveness in our age-friendly effort. We've done an initial survey completed by about 500 community elders. You can see some of the demographics there. Overwhelmingly female and overwhelmingly white. We are striving to get the voices of those that are underrepresented, and we're working on that. But just the normal, way in which you do surveys through online or through, normal contact doesn't seem to get those voices. So we're working hard to try to get those voices. Our initial data indicate that it's a good place to live and retire. Our initial data is that there's many places that are age-friendly in our community. Paradoxically, the campus is not one of them. So we need to work on that. Our future surveys not only are going to query, we've queried the older adults, and we're trying to get representation from underrepresented, but also from service providers and caregivers. I think we need to do a good job surveying them because they're involved in the whole process, I think. We have a Connections Cafe reaching out to where the older adults hang out. And interestingly, older adults are particularly interested in learning about technologies. And so in our, we have a representative from a wireless company who goes to our Connections Cafes, and he's overwhelmed every time with older adults trying to understand their smartphones and learning about apps and how they get them and how they can use them. So becoming age-friendly can impact our community, and really what we're striving for, in addition to all the altruistic benefits to the community, is leverage our interactions and the trust that we have gained for the advancement of research and knowledge, and translating the knowledge in our laboratories and in our communities out there. So that's really what we're about. So I'll stop there. Hopefully I didn't go too far over. Elena?
You're great.
I'm great. Thank you.
So before we open this up for questions, I'd like to make a couple of comments and have the panel sort of address an issue that sort of been bugging me as you've been talking. And that is that one of the commonalities you've all talked about, and this goes back to what Andrew said earlier, is that it's getting out there, getting into the community, engaging the people that are your audiences. Another thing you sort of a commonality, I think, is community mobility and transportation. And when I think about this for people aging with disability, amongst all of the cohorts and constituencies, that's a group that really has a difficulty in community mobility and getting out there. So if you go out into the community to engage people and you don't go to their homes and they can't get to you, how are you going to engage them? So how can we use technology from each of your perspectives to enhance community mobility, enhance their quality of life by not just getting them out to engage you, but to engage each other and the social lives that they might have had before they started aging and had comorbidities and other issues that then diminish their community mobility.
At ARC, we have in the past, we don't have funding for it right now, but done through a OASIS grant, a national organization, some computer training for people that are homebound, whether they connect by Facebook, teaching them those skills so that they do have a social network through technology. That's still in its infant phases, but I think there's much that can be done there. There's models of senior centers without walls where people can connect through technology, and those are areas I think that we have a lot of growth and potential for as we find funding to expand that.
Jeff, you want to?
Services, although they're always stressed in tight budget times, which of course we're experiencing as many other communities are, that provide transport for disabled individuals in the community. Like you said, the technologies in the home. I think I always am wary about that from the standpoint of let's not lose the face-to-face. There's studies that have been coming out with social media about how some people that are using social media are actually lonelier than the normal people who don't use social media. So it's about using the social media, trying to figure out how to engage that and promote face-to-face. I use it. I think we were talking yesterday about what was the word you used? Lurker? A lurker? Well, you go on Facebook and all you do is look at, you don't comment or anything, you just look. You're trolling. Yeah, that's a good. It's kind of.
It's sort of the same as sitting in the back.
So I use it like that. I mean, I look and I look at my daughter's page and others just to make sure some things are but I learn a lot of information. And then when I see those people face to face, I say, oh yeah, you were doing this. It's a good way to start a conversation. And I could see that. But you do have to bring those people together at some point to be able to use that.
On my side of it, as far as what specific technologies we look at for transportation, I always, when we do projects for General Motors, we always look at kind of what is the activity, right? So we always encourage our students to spend the first 5 weeks of the 15-week semester to go live the life, right? Because they don't know. They have no conception of what it's like to be 65. They're 20. They won't know that difference, right? Yeah. So I mean, and just like we, and there's even a difference between a 15-year-old and a 17-year-old. It's the same thing as asking what's the difference between an 8th grader and a junior in high school. Anybody who has kids will know that a junior in high school will never self-identify as an 8th grader in middle school. So even the difference between 62 and 65 is huge. So trying to understand for the students, what is their day-to-day life activity? What do they want to do? And then follow them around for that entire day. The technologies we use tend to be a lot of videography, right? As far as the technologies to actually capture the research. Now, right, so small embedded cameras, webcams, GoPros, various little things that are innocuous, right? The participants know they're being studied, but we don't want to shove a huge camera in their face. So what we want to do is say, well, are they struggling with lifting groceries into the back end of a car? Or they don't even bother doing that, they just use the back door because they have arthritis and they don't want to actually click the lever, right? One thing we found out was, guess what? That foot-activated motion sensor in the back of a Ford Escape is the worst idea ever, right? Because the first thing you lose in aging is your sense of balance. So you're asking somebody with groceries in their hands to lift on one leg and wave their foot underneath the bumper.
Not gonna work.
Now, granted, that Escape probably isn't designed for an elderly person, for an aging person. It's designed for a 28-year-old. So, but it's not a great idea if you're trying to spread your market. Now let's talk about actual technologies in vehicles, right? The technologies in vehicles are diverse. It's hard to understand exactly which technologies will be useful, right? Let's take autonomous vehicles, for example. Within autonomous vehicles, and I did my graduate studies at Stanford where we did an autonomous Touareg. It goes up Pikes Peak as part of the cars lab, Chris Gertie's cars lab. You have LiDAR, 3D stereoscopic cameras, ultrasonics, GPS, right? Lasers, laser scanning the environment, proximity sensor. So those are 6 different technologies that are used for autonomous vehicles. There's no one magic technology that can do everything. So what's more important is, what do you want to do? What's the activity that you're trying to encourage in your citizenry, in your populace, in the society? Don't get a technology and look for a problem. Find a problem or find a need in society and address it through different technologies. It's just a different fundamental way of thinking, right? And so in that sense, an autonomous vehicle can't just use one technology because it won't work. There just needs to be a bit of redundancy. And sometimes, like a LiDAR system is $15,000. There's nobody going to want to buy that right now in a vehicle. So the question really comes down to is what is if it is something as simple as, man, I just wish I didn't have to load these groceries in. What technologies are appropriate for the cost point required? Because if General Motors is going to sell this vehicle, it has to fit their margin. And if you don't know their margin, then you can't identify which technologies to use. So it's very important because there's adoptability of technology and there's just technology research. The technology research is a high-end LiDAR system will eventually get into vehicles, but it won't get into vehicles now. So if you want to make an impact now, then you have to be cognizant of the business structure. And obviously the public policy too, the regulations that are required for that.
Well, thanks. So I'd like to open it up for questions. We have about 5 or so minutes.
Hi, I'm Selena LaForce from the Wireless RERC. And regarding your question about community integration and your mentioning of mixed generational experiences, I wonder if anyone's partnered in the mention of the desire to learn about smart phones and apps, like partnering with YWCAs or Boys and Girls Club of America, providing, this mixed generation experience with learning technology and that sort of thing as a possible community engagement solution.
Radar, and it was born out of the fact that when we did these pop-up connection cafes, we had invited Wireless Mike's, the local, Verizon vendor, to come to this, and all of a sudden the older adults just swarmed this guy. It's like, let me, yay! And so obviously there's a need, right? And so figuring out how to do that. And I think you're right. I mean, intergenerational learning from the standpoint of engaging our students on campus and interacting, with them and trying to get them along with our older adults would be a great, but we need a place to do that because our older adults don't want to come to campus, right? It's not age friendly. So there was actually, I was reading a unique, is it Swampscott, Massachusetts did a unique thing when they were rebuilding a school. They actually built a intergenerational learning center within the school where older adults would come into the school, there'd be plenty of parking, they'd have a place to hang out, but then interact with, high school students. I think that would be, a great idea for colleges, universities, for high schools, if the opportunity presents itself. Yeah.
Other thoughts? Other questions? Yeah?
So both at the national level and I know, for example, on the Atlanta level, there's a lot of interest and potential investment in smart city technologies, intelligent infrastructure approaches. Not to lead with the technology, but what are some of the key problems where you would hope that if we could guide those types of investments, we could make a difference? Wayne, do you like how I put that out?
Yeah, thanks. No, actually, we did. We sponsored we had a smart infrastructure team that actually worked with the city planning and regional office at Atlanta. And so we had a team of 4 students actually go and interview the different regulatory agencies and civil agencies. The issue with the infrastructure, of course, is your time window for funding, right? So the average gestation of an automobile is what, 3 years from drawing to production. But the average road infrastructure is more like decades, right? So, I mean, the design of our, eventually we came up with like smart cells, where every time you would repave a road, you'd lay down a solar cell, prox sensor, a certain cellular node, and then clear something on top of it, right? But how fast are you going to do that, right? You're going to probably hit your main thoroughfare. You can't hit your main thoroughfares right away. You'd stop traffic for too long. So you'd have to think about what the time window of deployment, as well as when new stuff comes in. And then you really have to think about public-private partnership, right? We're talking about $40 million to do a major highway system just within the Atlanta structure. So how does that work? Like, the city's not going to want to pay for it themselves. If you think of it from a private partnership, well, is it something whereas as you drive down the road, your Tesla automatically recharges itself? Because guess what? It's got a solar cell, and if you have a magnetic inducer on the bottom, then you just put some kind of magnetic inducer underneath the car. It charges as it drives down that road. That would be like the super uber private toll road that charges your car, which then Tesla would pay for that to install in their vehicle. People would pay for that so that they can have distributed, and then the city would pay for that because now you have another electrical grid that doesn't need wires, right? Because it's paved into the road already. Every circuit of the road is a circuit. So you have to think that far ahead because it's 20 years in advance, right? You have to think that far ahead. So that's the issue though. Can you get all those three partners, OEM automakers, the city, and some kind of infrastructural private benefit, private company that wants to do that? It's possible, but you just have to look at the different timescales that are needed. And yeah, I mean, it's hard because you have to raise that kind of money, right?
My understanding was that all of our public infrastructure was going to be rebuilt in this next year.
Right. Huge, massive infrastructure spending bill. Yes, absolutely. We'll see how fast that goes.
The wall first.
Just what I heard. Patty? And then Nate?
Patty Griffiths. I'm with Tech and Emory and the Department of Veterans Affairs, the largest healthcare system in the United States at present.
Yeah.
And John and I have been successful over the last couple of decades getting funding for technology-based interventions. However, at the local level, when it comes to procuring the technology, we run into all kinds of obstacles because at the institutional, local level, they fear the technology. One example is we've gone to all using only iPads for data collection, and that was a very, very, very hard sell, trying to convince the VA that an iPad was actually safer than a clipboard with a piece of paper, which all of us in this room know it is. Another example is 2 years ago, we were given a small pot of money to pilot test Simple C Companion in the Community Living Center. Simple C Companion is this wonderful program which alternately can cue, engage, motivate nursing home residents, and it uses trusted voice, it uses photos. Well, photos of a daughter is considered protected health information. So how that's different on the device than it is on the wall of the nursing home room was a real hard sell. Consequently, it's taken us 2 years, and we've only begun consenting today. So how do you get over that fear, the cybersecurity issue, the fear of the loss of data? That has been a continual stumbling block for us, and it's crippling researchers in the VA.
Before you answer that, just for full disclosure, Simple C is in the audience.
Yes.
Suck up.
You want to take that one? Sorry, I don't know if I'll be able to.
Nobody wants to answer that question, and not because Simple C is here. I might add that at the VA, your clipboard your data has to be put in a locked plastic envelope for transport from a community site back to the hospital. And we were really scared that they wouldn't allow us to lock up the iPads or in the plastic envelopes because it was technology. Ultimately, they let us do that, but it's really hard to test technology when and use technology in research in certain venues.
Yeah.
Sorry, Patty.
Sure.
Oh,
All right, Nathan.
Hi. So I'm just curious to know, in your efforts to create healthy communities for aging, whether work and employment are actual concerns. I think we often erroneously believe that people who are aging have retired and no longer want to work, or that they're not actually working. And a lot of them probably do, and then we need accommodations or support for that, or maybe there is a role for technology to help with that.
I will say, yes, that work and employment is important. We've tried to shine a light on that through forums and workshops and so forth. It's not the main focus of ARC's work, but we certainly have partners and providers who work in that area, and we try to work collaboratively to share that. But it is becoming a bigger issue, especially as people live longer. People not only want to work longer, but in many cases, they need to work longer in order to support themselves. So I appreciate that.
I mean, I found that a lot of the research work we've done with looking at how transportation affects the aging population, we tend to look at things kind of more abstractly in design. We call this a design abstraction. It isn't necessarily employment that people want, and for some reasons they do need, they need finances, so they're required to work. I think the broader human need is to find purpose, right? Whether you're retired or you're working, you want the joy that brings you, the reason you want to continue living is you think you've got a purpose in life. So what is it that gives that purpose, right? And then the question is, well, what are the different affordances? What do we actually do, right, to instill that person with purpose? Do we give them the opportunity to showcase their purpose? And whether that be some kind of community engagement where they can exchange stories and say, oh, you're having, let me teach a student something, right? Like you're going through some kind of social issue. Let me tell you what it was like when, and that's usually what happens. There's this knowledge exchange and storytelling. Andrew mentioned storytelling that the older generation has really, really good narrative recall, right? They can recall small details from a long period of time. And that's one of those sense of purpose things, right? So if a student is having an issue, then there's a purpose of how do I give you my experience? How do I teach you my experience? And then so the interesting thing about that exchange is then how can you have either technology or an automobile help do that? So I think that's the fun kind of challenge. And if we abstract that to say how do we instill purpose as you age, then I think it's a fundamental design question.
Yeah. I think it's not just about employment, but also volunteerism. I know we have a program in our community, RSVP, Retired Seniors Volunteer Program, to find that purpose, which you're talking about. I mean, so not necessarily an employment situation, but, just finding a purpose,
To do
something to
things.
do, yeah.
All right, one quick comment, and then we're going to take a break.
Now, at Georgia Tech, I just read in their Daily Digest thing that they were focusing on having older people go back to school. So it would be nice to have curriculums that would interest older people so that they could have the purpose of earning a degree in something relevant, So, and that would incorporate all of the aspects of the transportation, technology, the engagement between the students and the community.
Or not even a degree. We have a Osher Lifelong Learning Institute at our university, and it's nice. It's right in the center of downtown, and older adults go there to learn about all kinds of different, things and don't necessarily get a degree. But we also a lot of so there's 1,300 members of that, and a lot of them are retired professors. So it is a special population.
Lifelong.
So that again becomes an issue for people aging with disability, and that mobility and being able to get to a lifelong learning sort of center or even a campus. And then on top of that, even if your campus is truly age-friendly and truly accessible for younger people with disabilities, having people with aging with disability and having multiple limitations becomes a whole nother issue. It gives new meaning to what accessibility really needs to be. So I think that's something that we need to think about in these intersections of all of this stuff. Some of these are really great ideas, but you know, how are we going to make it happen for the breadth of the community that we would like to be engaged? With that, I'd like to give you all a break.